Hallelujah. The Lord be with you. A reading from the Holy Gospel according to Luke. After Jesus had spoken, a Pharisee invited him to dine at his home. He entered and reclined at table to eat. The Pharisee was amazed to see that he did not observe the prescribed washing before the meal. The Lord said to him, "O you Pharisees, although you cleanse the outside of the cup and the dish, inside you are filled with plunder and evil. You fools! Did not the maker of the outside also make the inside? But as to what is within, give alms. Behold, everything will be clean for you." The Gospel of the Lord. Although you cleanse the outside of the cup and the dish, inside you are filled with plunder and evil. I was thinking about this gospel this morning, and I was able to attend at Wabash College last night. I was able to attend a Bible study with a bunch of the college students. There's a group called the Wabash Christian Men, and they do a Bible study every Monday night. And it was a very interesting conversation, as it always is there. The Bible study, I'm always very edified by those young men and their attentiveness to the Word of God and how much they're trying to let it influence their lives. And I was kind of struck by one of the members in particular. Throughout the conversation, right, there were different disagreements and different debates that would come up in conversation. And he just had this way of reconciling all of the different parties. And at the end of the night, we closed in prayer, and he closed us in prayer. And it was just kind of a moving experience as just the words just flowed out of his mouth. It was like the words were just overflowing from the fullness inside of him of love for God. Right? And I was very struck by that last night. Right? He was a man who was pure on the inside. Right? He was someone who had not just cleansed the outside of his cup, right? As opposed to many of the other students that were there last night. Many of those students feel held back. They're afraid to speak up in conversation. They're afraid to pray in front of other people. Right? It's because there's something holding them back, right, on the inside. I was thinking about that this morning. How often does that happen with all of us? This young man, Braden, right? I think in our experience, more often than not, we're not like Braden, right, but we're like all the other students, the Bible study. There's something that is holding us back. Remember when I was in seminary, I was able to, I went to a lot of different places when I was in seminary. I was in seminary for 9 years. It took me a long time to be able to pass all the classes, right, and be ready to be ordained. And one of the seminaries I was at, I had a very difficult time when I was there. And I noticed as the time went on, during my time at that seminary, right, it wasn't just the fact that the seminary was not a great place to be, that I had beasts of the formators. It was affecting me personally. It was affecting the way that I prayed to God. It was affecting my ability to be able to speak, right, to other people. One of the things that's always drawn me about the priesthood is the ability to speak and to preach. And I noticed when I was there, it was difficult for me to even give talks on retreats and other things. I noticed that when I was around other seminarians, when seminarians were happy or joyful, there was like this animosity inside of me towards them. Right? I had this resentment inside of me for the things that were happening at the seminary. And it was shutting off the life of grace within me. And I was like all those college students at the Bible study. There was something greatly holding me back from allowing God to overflow inside of me. I think all of us, very often, we have that same thing inside of us. Just like these Pharisees, we come to church. We may even pray. We may go to confession. We may try to live a morally upstanding life. But are we truly open to letting God overflow inside of us? What is it for you that holds you back from letting the love of God overflow in you, the joy of God overflow in you? What is it in this parish, right, that is holding us back as a parish from truly being the salt of the earth and a light to this community. Some of you might be a resentment of someone who has harmed you in the past, maybe even a parishioner. And sometimes when parishioners start to grow in their faith, or we see somebody growing, right, there's this temptation in us as parishioners to say, well, I know what that person did 10 years ago. Or I remember that time that this person was extremely rude to me. And now they're trying to represent the gospel in the church. For some of us, it's because we've become so advanced in our faith that we feel like we know so many things. We know how things are supposed to work. And so when a priest starts to make some adjustments, or when a parishioner has something to say, right, we close off if it's not immediately aligned with our own way of thinking. For some of us, it's just a fear. It's a constant fear of putting ourselves out there for God and in bringing up the faith in our conversations with others. Or it's a shame that we carry with us from some sin that we've committed in the past. And so we're afraid, again, to speak because we don't want to be called a hypocrite. Some of us, it's a resentment for maybe the situations in our life, maybe the marriage that you are in, or the way that your children don't practice the faith. Or maybe you feel like you should have had a different career. There are all sorts of things that can well up inside of us that close us off from allowing God to truly fill us and overflow inside of us. It's like a slavery that every time we feel God calling us to something more and something higher, right, we go back into this habitual way of thinking. Although you cleanse the outside of the cup and the dish, inside you are filled with plunder and evil. Pray that today we might ask God to purify us and rid us of whatever that is inside of us, and that we might have the courage to give it to Him and let Him eradicate it from our lives.